Yo, what is up, guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, a quick preview and prediction for Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev. This fight goes down on the 12th of December, and obviously, Anthony Joshua's IBF, WBA, and WBO heavyweight titles will be on the line. Kubrat Pulev is the IBF mandatory challenger. And yeah, the fight itself, it is what it is. It's a necessary evil. Pulev is mandatory, and ultimately, if you want to keep your belt, you've got to fight guys like that, unfortunately. So yeah, the fight itself, I mean, it doesn't really set the world alight, to be honest with you. If this was Pulev from a few years ago, it would be a lot more interesting, certainly, but reality is it's not. But anyway, I'll get into that a bit later. Let's briefly talk about the tail of the tape in regards to this fight. We'll start with the champion, Anthony Joshua. He has a record of 23 wins, 1 defeat, 21 of those 23 wins coming by way of knockout. Kubrat Pulev has a record of 28-1, 14 of those 28 wins coming by way of knockout. Anthony Joshua is listed as 6'6" with an 82-inch reach, whereas Kubrat Pulev is listed as 6'4.5" with a 79.5-inch reach. So Joshua has a 1.5-inch height advantage and a 2.5-inch reach advantage going into this fight. So as we know, Joshua is the bigger, taller, longer man in there. In terms of the stances, both of these guys are orthodox fighters, and when you look at the ages, Anthony Joshua is 31 years old, so he's still in his prime, whereas Kubrat Pulev is 39 years old. He turns 40 in May next year. So while Pulev does have experience and a good amateur background, he's seen better days basically. He's long in the tooth now, in my opinion, whereas Joshua is in his prime. So ultimately, when you look at the tail of the tape, everything points to Anthony Joshua in this fight. Joshua's younger, he's stronger, taller, longer, bigger, and he's in his prime, he's younger. Everything points to Joshua in this fight. But now the tail of the tape is out of the way, where do we start with this one? I guess we could start with what Kubrat Pulev needs to do to win, in my opinion. Now again, I'm assuming we're going to get the same Pulev from the last few fights. That version of Pulev, in my opinion, definitely looks past it. I've been watching Kubrat Pulev since before the Vladimir Klitschko fight, and in recent years, it's clear that Kubrat Pulev has slowed down a lot. His feet are a lot slower. He doesn't have the same bounce in his legs. His reaction time seems to be off these days. His punch resistance doesn't seem to be what it used to be. And yeah, ultimately, he doesn't seem as strong as he used to be back in the day. So with that being said, how does Pulev go about this one? Well, naturally, Kubrat Pulev is a boxer. He kind of like leans back, likes to gauge range and distance, and he wants to keep you on the end of that jab. One aspect of Kubrat Pulev's game that is world class in my opinion is his jab. His jab is clearly his best punch, and that's where all of his best work comes from. So obviously that punch could have success for Pulev in this fight. We've seen Joshua's nose being bloodied up in the past, the Takam fight, the Povetkin fight. You could easily see, Pulev get through with a couple of jabs, which caused Joshua some problems. That could certainly happen, but I don't think Pulev can really box with Joshua in this fight. I believe he actually needs to change it up in this fight because he's not as quick as he used to be. I don't think he's got the punch resistance that he used to have, and ultimately boxing with Joshua, I just believe that gives Joshua the time and space to eventually explode and land some big punches and ultimately knock out Pulev. So while I say Pulev's got a great jab, which he does, maybe he shouldn't be so reliant on it in this fight. Obviously use the jab as an attacking weapon to try and force Joshua back, make him uncomfortable, bloody him up and whatever. But I believe in this fight, Kubrat Pulev really needs to let it all hang out. Ultimately, he needs to go in there and try and knock out Anthony Joshua. He needs to test that chin of Joshua. Joshua's been hurt multiple times in the past and he's been knocked out. So for me, Pulev, at 39 years old, when he's declining in more ways than one, I think boxing with Joshua would be the wrong strategy, to be honest. And I know it sounds crazy considering Pulev's best punch is his jab. But for me, he needs to let it all hang out in this one. He needs to gamble, roll the dice, and really go for it. He actually did that against Vladimir Klitschko. He was very gung-ho in that fight and he got knocked out. Back then, people kind of said that it was the wrong strategy. I understand why he did it, but in this fight, I think that's the right strategy. I'm not saying that's going to win him the fight, but if Pulev does win this fight, the only way I can really see it is that he catches Joshua with something big. Basically, he needs to surprise Joshua. And what way to surprise Joshua? Well, Pulev traditionally is a back foot boxer. Not a back foot boxer, but he boxes behind the jab. And he's not all that aggressive for the most part. So switch it up in this fight. Take risks. Go gung-ho. See what happens. Try and test that chin. Pulev's right hand isn't as good as his left jab. His right hand is somewhat telegraphed, but it does clearly carry some sort of punching power. There is some meat behind that punch, and if that lands on the chin of Anthony Joshua, who knows what could happen, And so essentially Pulev needs to be aggressive in this one as far as I'm concerned. Maybe come forwards with a high guard. That's one thing about Pulev I don't like. Pulev actually does kind of hold his hands high, but his guard is terrible. It's so open. Straight punches can penetrate it. You can throw round Pulev's guard. Pulev needs to tighten up his guard in this fight. March forwards, shoulders tucked in, and come behind a ramrod jab. Try and force Joshua back and try and really rush him and engage in a shootout, basically. Chances are, even if he does that, he gets knocked out, but I think he's got a better chance doing that in comparison to boxing with Joshua and showing him too much respect. If you box with Joshua, you're not going to test his chin, you're not going to test his gas tank, and Joshua can box with you. And we saw that in the Joseph Parker fight with Joshua. Parker never forced the issue, and Joshua's gas tank looked fine, his chin looked fine. He was never really in any major problems in that one. And Pulev boxing with Joshua, I don't think it's going to work. Number one, you're more than likely not going to get the decision, but I think if Pulev does that, considering where he's at right now, he just gives Joshua the time to pick his shots and knock him out. And my big concern with Pulev going into this fight, I'm really not convinced about his punch resistance anymore. After that Klitschko fight, to me, he's never looked as sturdy in regards to the chin. I saw Huey Fury buzz Kubrat Pulev, for example. Bogdan Dinu was roughing him up a bit in there as well. He seems a lot more hittable now, and when he does get hit, he seems to feel it a lot more. So, if I'm Kubrat Pulev, I'd have one last roll at the dice. He's 39 years old. He's getting paid very well in this fight. Regardless of what happens, I'd imagine Pulev is set for life. So why not give it one final roll of a dice, leave it all in the ring, see what happens. Chances are, if Pulev does that, he'll still get knocked out. But in my opinion, it would give him a better chance in this one. So ultimately that's what I believe Pulev has to do. As for Anthony Joshua, Joshua needs to be Joshua. He's the more explosive fighter, he's the quicker fighter, and he's the more powerful fighter. Kubrat Pulev, leaves openings. He's not the fastest guy in the world. Essentially, Joshua needs to spot those opportunities and take them. Again, I mentioned it earlier. Kubrat Pulev's guard, his guard isn't the greatest. It's very porous. You can punch around the guard and you can punch through it. We saw that in the Klitschko fight. The left hook of Klitschko, every time Klitschko threw that left hook, it was landing on Pulev. And Joshua's got a very good left hook in my opinion, and it's very explosive as well, very quick. And I could really see that shot working for him in this fight, maybe step in with a jab and then come over with a left hook, for example. I could see that working against Kubrat Pulev. Another thing is, the right uppercut from Anthony Joshua could also be there. Joshua on the inside has actually got a very good uppercut. At times, Kubrat Pulev does come into clinch. Sometimes, for example, when he actually throws his right hand, he'll overshoot and he'll fall in, and he'll automatically try and get in a clinch. Again, in those moments, Joshua's the bigger, stronger, more physical guy. Fire the uppercut through the middle, rough him up and fire the uppercut through the middle. I could see that shot easily working for Anthony Joshua in this fight. And Joshua needs to be Joshua. He needs to show us that he's the bigger, younger, stronger man, and that's exactly what he is. Obviously, he's got to be smart to an extent, especially after that first Andy Ruiz fight. But he needs to put on a show in a certain sense, in my opinion. He really does. The first Andy Ruiz fight, obviously he got beat up in that one and got stopped. In the rematch, he won clearly, but it wasn't the most enthralling performance in the world. I think Joshua right now actually needs a bit of a devastating performance. I mean, the last time Joshua had one of those in a winning effort was, what, Povetkin? And that was 2018. We've not seen that destructive Joshua for a little while now. And even before that, the fights before Povetkin were Carlos Takam and Joseph Parker. Neither of those fights were all that entertaining. I think Joshua right now needs an explosive performance with an explosive knockout. And quite frankly, I think against Kubrat Pulev, especially this version of Kubrat Pulev, that is definitely likely. Ultimately, my prediction in this fight is Anthony Joshua by stoppage. I believe he's going to get to Kubrat Pulev between sort of round 5 and round 7, sort of a mid-range portion of the fight. I see Anthony Joshua knocking out Kubrat Pulev. I can't see Pulev taking too many flush punches from Anthony Joshua at this stage. A few years ago, Pulev would have been interesting, but right now, I just don't really see it. I've not been impressed with Kubrat Pulev for a long, long time now, to be honest. I mean, even the Hughie Fury fight, to me, he looked slow, he looked cumbersome, he got hurt in that fight. He's not impressed me for a long time, and I don't see him doing enough to really trouble Anthony Joshua, if I'm being honest. And it is what it is, It's a mandatory defence. Joshua's got to take it. So, yeah. Anyway, my prediction is Anthony Joshua by a mid-round stoppage. Share your thoughts below. What do you make of this fight? Do you give Kubrat Pulev any chance whatsoever? Or like me, are you leaning towards Anthony Joshua in a big way? Well, I say leaning, I'm not leaning. I'm sure Anthony Joshua wins this fight. Anyway, share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.